to another episode of the Exploring Washington State podcast. Here's your guest host, our very own social media maven, MacKenzie Passegger.
Hey guys, welcome back to Exploring Washington State. Today we've got an avid hiker, Jon Anés on. He's originally from Puerto Rico and currently lives in the North Bend area. Thanks for being on today.
Hi, thank you for the invite. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. So how long have you been in Washington State then?
I've been in Washington State for 3 years now, and I'm loving it.
What's your favorite thing? What made you move to Washington?
Well, I came over here for work training, and I was amazed by this place, and I just had to come back like a few months later to show my family, and a few years later, we decided that we wanted to live here for hopefully forever.
And what made you choose the North Bend area?
I like the access to, number one, to the highway, and number two, to the mountains. So, I'm just a few minutes away from some of the best hiking and climbing in Washington. So I think this is the perfect place to live.
Did you start hiking when you moved to Washington, or had you already started beforehand?
My love for nature started when I was a kid. We used to have a big property, and we used to just go in our backyard and just be gone all day climbing trees, and we had a really, really tall grass. I mean, I'm talking about like all the way. I mean, to when I was a kid, it was as tall as I was. So we will just walk through this maze of to these fields, and just climb up and the trees and just have fun. So yeah, it was always entertaining for sure.
But getting out into the mountains, had you done that previously, or did that start in Washington?
That started, my brother was working for Yosemite National Park, and he invited me to come and visit him. And he asked me what I wanted to do, and I told him that I wanted to climb Half Dome. And at that point, I was already training to be a traditional or sport climber, and in an indoor gym. And when I went to visit him, that kicked my butt. It was about 10 miles to the approach. The approach, it was 10 miles to get in, and then we climbed about 7 or 8 pitches, and then we descended and then hike another 10 or 11 miles. And I realized where I was in my physical condition. But I mean, we accomplished everything in one day, but it was very difficult. And then after that, I said, you know what? No, I gotta get even deeper into this, and like even better. So I started hiking more and traveling for hiking and for climbing. And then I got tired of that, and I was like, I need to live in a place that I can just have quick access to everything. So that's how I end up here too.
Open the front door and basically be on the mountain and go wherever.
Pretty much. I can take my bike, and in 25 minutes I can be in Rattlesnake Lake, or I can be in the Iron Horse Trail. So it's super, super easy for me right now.
Can you explain for those that are listening that might not know what a pitch is when hiking, what that term means?
That is more of a climbing term. So when you're doing a traditional or sport climbing, you are dividing the climbing is divided by how high I don't know how to explain it, but basically you climb onto a certain point where you have your chains or your anchor, and then you set up your anchor, and then you bring your partner up with you. So that's one pitch. And then you set up to climb to the next pitch.
And so like a pit stop.
Basically, yeah. It's like where you...
In layman's terms.
Right. That's where you like go and like set up again because your rope is only as long, right? Typically, a traditional climber will have a 60 or 70 meter rope. So, it will get to maybe like 90 to 100 feet or something like that. And then you bring everything up, and then you move on to the next set or pitch. So.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so when you first started out hiking, what do you think were the biggest mistakes that you made?
Um, the biggest mistakes that I made, it was maybe getting to the trail a little late. That was always kind of my, just kind of underestimating the how long it was going to take me, and I have gotten really really good at that since then. I can tell you exactly how long it's going to take me to do something now, because I wanted to get really good at that, because I wanted to have enough time to finish things, if I started them. So I will say that was my biggest mistake. So I would get to a place and I'll be like, oh, this is going to take me an hour, and then 3 hours later I'm like, oh shit.
That took you much longer than you were expecting.
Yes.
I think I still make that mistake when I'm getting out and hiking, though. I'm like, oh, it's not going to take me that long. And then I'm 5 hours into it and I thought, oh, okay. Whoops.
Now people argue with me. They're like, no, it's going to take us 2 hours. I'm like, no, it's going to take us 3.5 hours. It's going to be this amount. And then typically I am to the T on time.
So how did you improve that, calculating how long it's going to take you to get somewhere?
So I started looking at my average mile, my speed, depending on elevation gain. I just got a lot more technical with it. And when I look at when I finish hiking, I look at my stacks and I just realize, okay, so, if I was going in this particular area where I climb 1,000 feet, it took me this amount of time. And, I just kind of see I get to the bottom of how long is it going to be for me to finish depending on elevation gain and distance, how long is it going to take me? And it's pretty cool whenever you start getting to those details. You can realize where you're at physically, and so that's how I manage everything now.
So keeping track of basically all of your statistics for each hike and then being able to reference them again.
Right. And then you can compare them to the next hike, and see, you can kind of average.
Right. What would be your top couple of tips for people that are just getting started out hiking in Washington? What's important for them to know or to be aware of that they might not be because they haven't been out yet, or they've only been out once or twice and they want to get more serious about hiking?
Well, with everything that is going on right now, there is a ton of new hikers in the trails, and I would say, for the most part, what I've seen, it's been good. It's been people that are, I always ask, how much water do you have? That's my number one question. You can be struggling, but if you have water and you have snacks and, things to refuel, I think that's very important. That will bring your spirits back up, and it will keep you hydrated and, off of getting trouble. But, a lot of people, I think the biggest mistake that people are making today is just they don't know what to do with their things that they want to dispose and in parking in certain areas. So just I am the kind of person, and you can follow this advice too if you want to, that I plan for one particular hike, but if it doesn't pan out the way that I wanted, I have plan B and plan C. So I would say when you plan, have multiple options, because when you get to a place and the parking lot is full, then you know that this particular trail is overwhelmed already. So you should probably consider going to plan B or potentially plan C. Just so you are not overcrowding places, you're not creating harm. You're not overcrowding the parking lot where there's been a lot of issues, with that. And if you are the type of person that need to, it's considering keeping social distance, and then you can manage that a lot better, right? It's a little stressful if you're trying to keep your distance from someone else. If the trail is pretty crowded, that you can have that ability in another place, so that would be my biggest advice right now. Just be conscious of where you're at and what's going on in that particular area, and just plan out extra, other options. That way you're not, stuck with one option. So
Having a backup plan. That's actually a really good idea that I've never thought about. I mean, I'm not as avid as a hiker as you are, but I definitely am like a fair weather hiker. And if I went out somewhere and the parking lot was full, I'd probably be like, "Oh, no, it's okay." Like wasn't meant to be. But I think that's a great idea, having one or two backup hikes just,
like
in the back of your mind.
I'll share a few experiences that I had with my friend Nate or with my friend Darren, that we recently, we recently have planned things that have not come out the way that we wanted. So we have taken, we have just making a big U-turn and like end up in another state. I mean, not everybody has that ability, of course, but like at that particular moment, that was an option. And we were able to do it. And honestly, the best adventures have been plan B and plan C sometimes. So you never know. If you plan for multiple things, you just never know what's going to happen. So it's good to have it.
I think, yeah, keeping flexible and being spontaneous about it, because I think a big part of it is, at least for me, if I know I'm going on this one specific hike, I plan, my day and the day afterwards around it, and I'm mentally preparing myself. This is where I'm going to go. It's going to take me about this long. I know I'm going to be completely done afterwards. And I have then the problem of being spontaneous and saying, it's okay, let's go on a different one. So I think that's definitely something that I'm not the only one struggling with that. So maybe someone that's listening can feel inspired by that.
Definitely. I was talking to someone yesterday about that, and they were like, what do I do if if the parking lot is full? And this is where this idea came out to talk about this, because I think that is very important. Right now, I've been I was in Montana 2 weekends ago, and one of the things that I realized is, I was in Glacier National Park, is that, typically Glacier National Park closes their gates at like midday because they're overwhelmed with the amount of people that are going. And that's a good thing, that people are going out there and enjoying nature. That is a great thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But what I've noticed while I was in the park, it was just people were not very considerate of other people's time, or if they will park anywhere, if there was no parking space, or they were just I even saw a couple, and I think I mentioned this in my story, but I saw a couple that we were going down Logan's Pass, and they were parked literally in the middle of the road. And if you have taken that road, that's like technically a 1-lane road, considered 2-lane. And they were as soon as I come around this turn, and I see this car parked in the middle of the road, and like I have people behind me, so I had to slam on my brakes, and I honked the horn. And this couple, I didn't notice that they were actually on a ledge taking a selfie on the side of the mountain. And when I honked the horn, they got scared and they kind of jumped up, and I was like, oh my gosh, they probably would have fallen off if they it was
honk the horn, guys.
Oh my gosh, I was so scared that situation. But I was also like, I couldn't shake that off my head for a few days, because that could have turned into a really, really bad situation, a car accident, or somebody injuring themselves because they wanted to take a picture. And so my point is, we have to be conscious of what we're doing. We know that sometimes that what we're doing is not right. And when we're out in the trails or out in nature, just for that one picture or for, just be conscious, that's why it's good to have multiple plans. It's just, it's the right thing to do. If not, our trails are going to get closed. They're going to have more regulations. We're going to have more limitations when we go out there. And nobody wants that. I mean, this is pretty amazing right now, the way it is.
Yeah, having the freedom to just be able to pick up and go on almost any trail without needing a pass or, a day pass or anything like that.
Exactly. That is very important. Yeah.
Yeah. So what would you say is your favorite hike that you've done in Washington in the last 3 years? Is there a favorite one?
I don't know. I don't think I have a favorite hike. There's places that have definitely, humble me. Um, but every single hike that I've done,
Yeah.
I picked it for a reason, right? Like, it wasn't for the views, or it was for the lake, or it was um, or it was just for the challenge in general. But right now, I'm obsessed with a hike that I haven't been able to do, and every time that I plan to do it, so I'm gonna call it my favorite, even though I have not done it. Which I'm trying to summit Glacier Peak, and
Mm-hmm.
and this is no joke. This is a very, very serious hike. So if you're looking into it and you hear me talking about it, just make sure that you do your research if you decide to put it on your plans, because it is one of the most remote hikes here in Washington. The approach is insane. Just to get to, start climbing the mountain, and you have to go over crevasses and everything. So you have to know what you're doing. This is not something that you just wake up a Sunday, you say, I want to do this.
It's not a
So
casual day hike.
no, no, no. And, we were planning on doing that 2 weekends ago, and we end up in Montana because the smoke was so bad that we decided to just go to another state, which is what I was talking about earlier. I would suggest that if you hear me talking about it, just
Do
do
the
your research.
research.
Yeah, and practice and learn.
Yeah. So when you're preparing to go on a big hike, like theoretically Glacier Peak, what do you take with you to protect yourself from, the wildlife or, any dangers that may come your way?
So definitely always a first aid kit. Um, eh, for animals, I would say, yeah. Well, I own two bear spray bottles, and I typically take one with me. But if I'm with multiple partners, then I share the other one. I've never had to use it. I keep my distance if I see animals, but um, um, I was doing a backpacking trip recently, and I made the mistake of not cooking far enough from my campground,
Mm.
and I woke up the next day with tracks of a cat in, like, literally by my head, where I was sleeping in my tent. So the tracks were like, and I felt it. I felt something like around 2 or 3 in the morning, like kind of sniffing. And I was like, I'm pretty high up. There's no like little critters or anything like that. This is probably it. But I was just like, I'm not going to, I just made a little noise, and I said, I'm not going to get out of here. And I woke up in the morning, and I think the smell that it was on me from the food, I think it attracted a big cat. So that could have turned into a really bad situation. So
So
I,
learn
I
from the mistake and cook further away from your campsite.
farther away. My food was properly placed, which is typically, if you are backpacking, you should have a bag where you're gonna put all your food, and then you should have a small rope that you can throw over a tree, and like put it on a branch and like hang it pretty high up. That way nobody gets in your food and you don't attract any bears or any cats or anything like that. But also the prepping of the food has to be somewhere else away from your area. That way you don't attract anything as well. So I got to go farther to cook.
I can't even. I would have been very scared. I'm not gonna lie. If I felt something at 2 or 3 in the morning outside of my tent,
Yeah, so it was. I laugh now, but it was. Yeah, my friend and I were like, "Oh my gosh, we are idiots."
Yeah.
Live and learn. Live and learn.
Live and learn. Stay safe. Take the bear spray. Cook further away.
But most important, live.
But don't live in fear.
Don't live in fear.
So we got some questions for you on Instagram. And one question that I thought was really good was, how do you balance being safe and challenging yourself mentally and physically?
Okay, so how do I balance
being safe and challenging yourself mentally and physically? Because you've got 2 kids, so you can't just go out there and, do whatever.
Out.
So how do you you can't while out anymore. So how do you keep that balance?
Well, so for me, I know my physical limits. So I have pushed myself enough to know where I'm at, and that's where I kind of that's how I make my decisions, right? So I stay safe because I know that what I planned was well researched, and I'm also not the type of person that bulldoze my way through an activity, right? Like if this is it, if I think whether it's climbing, whether it's hiking, whether it's kayaking, who cares? Like whatever the activity is, if I feel like I'm not gonna have enough time, or that if I'm rushing through things, and I try to realize that I am not putting 100% of my concentration on what I'm trying to do, my focus, right? Like I'm not concentrating enough, and that is where you make a lot of mistakes. So I am aware of that, and fortunate for me, I have never been injured or have had any type of situations where I have to be rescue or something like that, which I'm thankful for that. But it is because planning, and then knowing myself, and then also not being too hard on yourself and saying, I need to finish this, right? Like if it's not possible that day, just turn around and plan it again, and give yourself more time, or whatever the situation may be, or train a little more. And I think that that's very important to recognize, and not have that ego ahead of you saying, oh, this is nothing, you can do this, or like rush through this, you're going to be able to finish it. Like, right, that voice in your head that sometimes just is not what you need. It's the opposite. And having good partners too. Somebody that can wake you up and say, yo, like, this is not gonna work out today. Like we gotta go. There's a storm coming, or there's whatever it may be, right? Those are people that I appreciate and respect, because they are, they're looking out for you, and they care for you and for themselves as well. So like it's good to listen to others as well.
So I think the main theory that we keep going back to is being prepared and kind of leaving your ego at the door. Don't be taking selfies on the ledge of a mountain. Don't push yourself. And I think that this is something, especially with the rise of social media in the last, however many years, in the outdoor activity, you go on Instagram and you see these absolutely just amazing views, people hiking, going to the craziest of places, and you're thinking, maybe I've been a couple times, I can do this too. And I think it's important to realize one day you can do that, but you got to do the little hikes first. You got to get used to being in the outdoors. You have to know how to prepare yourself, how to prepare your tent and everything that you're taking with you before you can go and climb Glacier Peak, for example. You're not just going to wake up one Sunday and be able to conquer it all.
Right. I have one of the people that I follow on Instagram. There's a guy that just recently, and I was trying to get some data from him, some information about Glacier Peak specifically, and he was gonna summit it that weekend, and I talked to him like at the end of the weekend, and I said, hey, do you finish your challenge for the weekend? And he's like, well, unfortunately, I rolled my ankle and now I need surgery, and this is a well experienced, mountaineer from Washington, and a few weeks later, yes, he was getting surgery, but it's you never know what's going to happen. So you have to be flexible, right?
Flexible and roll with the punches.
Roll with the punches. So anything can happen. And he had good partners with him, so they were able to help him to, get out of that 20-mile hike, so it's not
Can you
easy.
imagine?
Yeah. It's very difficult, but it is things that you have to be aware that could happen. Nature is beautiful, is wonderful, but it's also very, very intimidating if you are connected with it, right? Like if you understand, if you're surfing, hey, this wave can take me and like drown me. Or if you're climbing, hey, I could fall, a rock could fall and hit me. If there's a lot of variables. And if you are connected with that instead of just bulldozing your way through it, then you're going to have a really, really, really good time. I'm not trying to create any fear. I'm just trying to wake you up and make you think things differently, right?
Yeah, different point of view, different perspective, different things to be aware of.
Yes.
Yeah.
And stay safe.
And stay safe. So one last question for you. So you've got 2 kids. How old are they?
13 and 6.
And do you guys ever get out hiking with the kids? Do they enjoy it as much as you do?
Oh yeah, I take him out. I mean, I have my 6-year-old, and she was probably like 4, doing 10 miles and everything. I mean, she's a champ. I think she's gonna be really well known around here when she's older.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for being on today. I really enjoyed it. Okay, so you've had your daughter since she was 4 doing 10-mile hikes. How did you get to that with her? How did you get started?
Well, there was a lot of crying. There was a lot of empty promises and and a lot of
Bribery.
Yeah. It was basically, in the beginning, it was me carrying her, and eventually I started like telling her, "Hey, I'll carry you in 1 mile from now," and then that 1 mile will be 3 miles. So she would be like, "When are you gonna carry me?" And that actually never happened. So then at one point she just stopped asking, and now she's just looking forward to food at the end of the hike. So that's my go-to now. It's like, hey, you want some pizza after we finish here? So let's go, let's move faster.
Let's get that pizza.
Hey, so soon I'm gonna have her trail running, and let's see what happens.
That's fun. We started recently hiking with my daughter last summer when she was 4 as well. And there was also a lot of bribery for hot chocolate involved.
Mm-hmm.
And also a lot of playing tag. Who can run faster?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we weren't, on the side of a mountain doing smaller trails, but it's fun getting your kids out there and having them enjoy nature from a younger age. I think it builds an appreciation that as an adult, you might not be able to build if you start later in life.
Oh, definitely. It's such an important part. They love camping, they love hiking, they love, they're involved in activities with their friends also that is outside, and I think that's probably one of the most crucial things for their development, in my opinion. So.
No, I definitely agree. I mean, it's good for their motor skills, and there's a lot to learn from nature, isn't there?
Definitely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on today. I really enjoyed chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invitation. I really appreciate it. It's an honor for me to be part of this podcast. And if you guys want to follow me on Instagram, is my handle is JONERICK1. And thank you so much again.
All right. Thank you.
All
Bye.
right, have a good day. Bye.
Join us next time for another episode of the Exploring Washington State podcast.